Hello again, as you know, I am Eli, the computer guy, and today we're going to talk about small server room cooling. And we have this product from Geist called OpenGate, which is a really cool, intelligent fan system that would be very useful in the real world. So again, you guys are out there, you're worrying about, Active Directory and Cisco and all that kind of stuff. But then when you get into the real world, you get into much more mundane problems, such as how the hell do you cool your server room, right? Because in the real world of technology, most of us have to deal with small offices for whatever reason. Even if you're in an enterprise, even if you're in a large company, many times those large companies have remote offices. So the headquarters may have 10,000 people in it, but then they have 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 of these little remote offices that may only have 5 or 10 or 20 employees there. And so when you go to those offices, many times what they call a server room has a lot to be desired. One, you hope that they actually have given you some kind of room that you can lock the equipment in, that it actually has a door and a key lock. But many times, even if you can get something like this, the problem is that they're essentially giving you a broom closet. I've seen this time and time again, where you go into the server room and literally it is a broom closet that's had a couple of shelves nailed in so you can put the servers or equipment in there, and that's it. Here's the problem though, right? Is that all of that equipment is putting off heat. And so when you go to do physical security and close and lock the door, about 30 minutes after you close and lock that door, all the systems shut off because they have overheated. Why? Because it's a broom closet. It doesn't have an HVAC system built into it like you are supposed to have. It probably doesn't even have vents in there because, when architects are designing office buildings, they don't think about putting vents into broom closets because broom closets don't need to be air conditioned, right? So the problem that you deal with is you have this little tiny shoebox of a room. If you want to deal with physical security like you should as a good administrator, the problem is as soon as you close that door, everything overheats and then crashes. So in order to do environmental security for your equipment, you keep the door open. But that means if any crackhead walks in, they may literally come in and steal your servers. Again, here in the Baltimore area, that's one of the problems that we have to deal with. Everybody's worried about all these Chinese hackers and all that kind of horse crap. Let me tell you, dealing with clients in Baltimore City, I was far more worried about crackheads coming in and stealing a server, literally not even knowing what a server is, but they'll look at it and go, ooh, I can go to the pawn shop and sell this thing for 25 bucks, right? So if you don't have physical security, you have a problem. So the issue is, what do you do then, right? Because you have this problem. Either you can keep your equipment cool or you can keep it secure. Well, one of the things, one of the devices you may want to put into your little server room that you have is a piece of equipment like this Geist OpenGate that I'm going to be showing you guys today. So I'll just go over the demo table for a second just to show you this thing before we go into the full demonstration. But this is an intelligent fan system. So basically this has two fans on it. It has a whole little computerized server thing in here. It's actually connected to the network. And what you do is you cut a hole in your basically broom closet wall. You put this in there, and then you're able to control this to make sure that the room stays cool. Now, if we go over to my computer, I can kind of show you the little drawing that they have. And just to visualize this a little more, this is the pictures they have, and this is how you would use this in a normal world. So you have your little shoebox of a room with all of your server equipment. Obviously doesn't have a dedicated HVAC system. And maybe, right, maybe somebody decided to put a vent in the door. But the problem that you have is if people put a vent in the door, but there's no way for the air to circulate, everything is still going to overheat. So what you do is you put a vent in the door, this is just a normal vent, and then you connect a fan like this either to the ceiling or to the side of the room, and then when the fan turns on, that then pulls air through the room and cools the entire room. So you don't need a dedicated HVAC system because this will pull the ambient air out of the office spaces that are most likely kept at a reasonably cool temperature for you to do it. So this is basically what we're talking about when we're talking about something like this Geist open gate. So let's go back over to the demo table, and I can show you a little more what's going on with this. So if you look at this thing, it's a decent size, right? So this is, I don't know, it's about 2.5 feet by about 3 feet. So this is definitely a real piece of equipment. And if I lower it down like this, you can see that it's pretty thick. And it is heavy. This is steel, this is metal. So if you do secure it into a wall, you do have to make sure it's secured well. It's got your nice little screw holes here, so that's no big deal. From that point, all you have to do is basically you just need a normal wall outlet to plug it into the wall. And then what you're going to do to be able to control this thing is then you need to connect this to your network. So when this starts out, it has its own default IP address, but once you configure it, you can set its own IP address, and then you can get to this thing from anywhere. So basically, as I'll show you in a minute from my computer, you open up a web browser, and then you're able to configure this, this fan system. Now, beyond being able to configure the fan system, what's nice about having this plugged into the network is since this has temperature sensors in here to tell it when to turn on and when to turn off, or when to speed up and when to slow down, it can also send out alerts. So this itself can actually send out email alerts when certain conditions are triggered, and it can send out alerts, Snmp alerts. So if you have Snmp, a simple network management protocol management system, this can send information to that system so that you know what's going on. So again, let's say you have 50 offices, you put these into all 50 offices, and then you set these up so that they talk back to that Snmp management system, then you can know what's going on with all of your offices. You can say, oh, look, the office in Phoenix seems to be overheating right now. Maybe we should look into that. So with that, let's go back over to the computer, and I can kind of show you how this thing is managed. Oops. I can show you how this thing is managed, because like I say, it's a pretty cool thing. So in order to deal with this, all you do is you go to its IP address. So currently right now it's 192.168.1.123. So this is a normal, just web interface. Then we can go and we can take a look at all the information that they have to offer here. So the first thing is it shows us the sensors. So it shows us the temperature, and it shows us the capacity. So the temperature obviously is the temperature in the room right now, so it is a little bit warm in here right now. It's 80.6 degrees Fahrenheit. And the capacity, what this means is how fast is this fan going compared to what it can be. So right now it's at 30% speed. I can make it at 50% speed, or I can make it at 100% speed. So it's a variable speed fan, so this shows you what it's doing. We can go down here and we can take a look at the alarms. So this is a very useful thing. Again, like I say, is if you're an administrator dealing with a lot of different offices, so you can have alarms that can send emails or Snmp traps out. And basically you can do things like you can say, if the temperature goes above, 90 degrees, and you say the alarm must be tripped for, let's say, 10 minutes, because you don't want it going off just all willy-nilly, then send an email, and then you would save changes. Then you can say, do you want this to repeat? Right? So do you want to get a message every hour if this condition continues, so you know what's going on? So this is very useful. Again, if you've got a lot of those remote offices, you don't necessarily need to worry about whether the temperature in your server room is 80 degrees or 81 degrees, or 82 or 85 or 86. But if it goes over 90 degrees, then you know that there's probably an issue. Did the HVAC system for the entire office fail? Something like that. And so if you get these alerts, then you know what's going on. The nice thing with these alarms is you can set a lot of different alarms. You can set the capacity, you can set, the temperature. If you want it to be below, let's say if it starts freezing, you can say all that kind of stuff. So all of this stuff you can configure here. Those alarms are very nice. Beyond that, you can go over to logging. So this just kind of shows the log and shows you how things have been going. We can go over to display, the simple display information. We can go to the configurations. This is where you can say whether you want it to pick up a DHCP address or whatever IP address you want to give it. You can go to monitoring. This shows you all the information. So all those email addresses we talked about. So if you want to be able to send out alerts, this is where you configure the email address. This is where you configure the SMTP server, the SMTP port, so on and so forth. You put in your business hours. Down here, you do your simple network management protocol information. So if you want this information sent back to a management server, this is where you would plug all that stuff in. And then one of the other cool things that you can do here is you can actually configure IP cameras. So unfortunately, I don't have an IP camera laying around that's up and running. But what you can do is you can configure an IP camera on the same LAN that this fan is on, and then when you pull up the dashboard, not only will you see the temperature, but you will also see the feed out of that IP camera, right? So let's say that you see that there is an alert. You log into this particular fan, not only can you see that the temperature is 95 degrees, but you can look and see what the IP camera sees, and I don't know, you might see a fire, and then you go, oh crap, there's a fire, and then you call 911. So that can be a very nice, useful thing, and again, now with IP cameras being so inexpensive, that's no big deal. You can go down to diagnostics and event log, just showing you guys this, because again, like I say, there's a lot of different things you can plug in here. Then beyond that, you can then go down to control. So control is where you set how the fan, how fast the fan is going to be going. So you can either just put it at a standard fan capacity, or you can set it based on a certain temperature. So right now it's at 30. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it up to 100. So when I do 100 and then I hit save, I know you guys can hear the fan in the background, but you're going to hear it rev up as it goes to 100. So you guys should hear how much louder that is now because the fan actually sped up. So if we don't want it to be so fast, then we can go and we can say, I don't know, we just want it to be at 60. We can save changes, and then you can hear the sound where it goes down. So beyond that though, we can set a temperature point. We can say what temperature we want the room to be. So right now I could I want the room to be 70 degrees. I hit save. And then it's going to try to cool the room down to 70 degrees just using fans. So now you can hear it speeding up because it's trying to suck more air into the room. Then I can say, no, you know what, 95 degrees is fine for this room, let's say. Hit save. And now you're going to hear it slow down. You hear it slow down right there. Because now it goes, okay, well, the room is 80 degrees and the set temperature is 95 degrees, so it can slow down. So that's really, you know, what there is to one of these open gate fans. And again, like I say, in the real world, this is a great thing. I mean, this is an incredibly valuable thing in the real world, even if you don't use a product, you know, from Geist. Just think about putting a fan into your server room to be able to cool it down a little bit, because that really is a big issue. Now, if you're thinking about buying one of these things, we go over to the computer again. I can just show you. This Geist thing is a little expensive, but just to give you guys an idea of what things cost in the real world, this sucker is $1,650. But I will say this is steel I mean, it's built well. This is enterprise class equipment, and that's what enterprise class equipment costs. So, you know, it's kind of like when I talk about mobile stuff and I go, well, that's expensive, but that's about what all mobile stuff costs. That's the same thing here. Like $1,650 for a computerized fan system may seem very expensive to you, but again, in the real world of IT, that's kind of like, yeah, whatever. Oh, you want a fan? You know, here, just buy two. But yeah, so this is the Geist Open Gate Model RAC10, and I think it's a great thing. Again, like I say, as a consultant, I ran into the problems of cooling those little server rooms quite a bit, and it's a massive issue. It's worse than viruses. Again, you know, you guys are focused on viruses and patch management and all that kind of stuff. Server equipment overheating was a big issue that I ran into. Now, the only thing that I will say, and again, this is one of those buying advice things that you should be thinking about, is that if you go out and buy any kind of these fan systems, you should listen to it first. You will notice this one is pretty loud. Again, this is one of the issues you run into in the real world, right? And In the world that you imagine that you're walking into when you graduate college, you think you're going to get a full-fledged server room, and it's going to be back in the rear of the building, away from everything else, right? Because that's what you're supposed to have. You should have it should have its own HVAC system, and it should have its own physical security, its own door lock, the whole 9 yards, so that it's environmentally secure and it's physically secure, and that's great. Here's what happens in the real world. What happens in the real world is basically you get whatever broom closet the manager of the business decides you can have. Hopefully, it is, again, it's back, you know, out in the warehouse or out someplace where most people aren't going to be around. And so if it's out in a place where people aren't going to be around very often, then it doesn't really matter how loud the fan is, right? Because you can probably still hear the fan in my microphone. So, you know, if this is out in a warehouse, or, you know, if this is in a storage room area and the fan is on as it is now, you know, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, then that's no big deal. The thing that you should think about, though, is sometimes that broom closet, sadly, brings a tear to my eye, is like right beside the secretary. Or the broom closet is the closet in the room with all your salespeople, right? So if you have a fan system as loud as this thing, with all of your salespeople trying to call clients, that will be a bad deal. So what I will say is, if you're going to be looking for any of these fan systems, think about where your little broom closet is going to be for your server equipment. You know, how close is it going to be to employees? If it is going to be way far away from employees, then it doesn't really matter how loud it is. This thing is fine. If it is going to be in a public area where employees are going to be, frankly, this thing is way damn too loud, honestly. And so you would want to find something that is going to be a good bit quieter. So there we go. Again, all the cool fancy stuff these companies are sending to me, but something to think about one way or the other is how are you going to cool that little broom closet of a server room. And this pretty nifty device, I do have to say. So again, like I say, even if you don't go for Geist, definitely take a look at something like this, because this is one of those that I've run into a lot. You know, again, this isn't one of those things where Geist called me up and said, hey, can you demo our equipment on your show? This was actually where I found out about this, and then I contacted Geist because I was like, I dealt with that problem dozens of times, and I'd like to show my fans how you can try to solve it. So yeah, this is a real thing in the real world. Something for you guys to be thinking about. Again, modern IT, it's not just about Active Directory and Cisco routing protocols and all that kind of stuff. Physical security, operational security, environmental security. Those are just as important as worrying about those stupid Chinese hackers. I swear. I swear. Is managing users and computers on Active Directory too cumbersome? Download SolarWinds' terrific trio of free Active Directory admin tools today and start saving time on those Active Directory management tasks. These free tools help you manage and remove computers and users from Active Directory and allow you to add users in bulk. The free tools include Inactive User Account Removal Tool, enables you to scan Active Directory and optionally remove users who have not logged in for a certain amount of time. Inactive Computer Account Removal Tool enables you to scan Active Directory and optionally remove computers that are over a certain number of days old. And User Import Tool saves time by giving you the ability to create users in bulk using a CSV file. You can even specify the attributes. Also be sure to check out SolarWinds' community page, thwack.com, to connect with more than 100,000 IT professionals. So take a look at solarwinds.com for their free and other tools. Spiceworks.com. These guys have the free network management software, the free mobile device management software, the free community with millions of users. So if you're an IT professional and you need support, Spiceworks is a great place to go. All of their stuff is basically free and just an absolutely great thing. Again, if you have any questions that I don't answer in the show that are technical in nature, you know, we're talking about Active Directory synchronization between sites in remote areas. If you click on the link below this video, that will take you to the Spiceworks community. They have millions of users there that will be able to help you out. So take a look at spiceworks.com. SchooleyMitchell.com. If you're trying to find better internet or telephone service, or if you're trying to find less expensive internet or telephone service, give Schooley Mitchell a call. Basically what these guys are telecom consultants. You call them, you say what you need for yourself or your client, and they figure out the best option. They'll examine your existing services and review your bills to make sure there are no errors. Then they'll keep an eye on your services moving forward so that everything remains optimized. Because Schooley Mitchell is objective and independent, they have no ties to vendors. You know they are always your best interests in mind. The best part is there is no fee for their services. The only cost is a portion of the shared savings over a set period of time. If they don't find savings, there is no cost to you. Schooley Mitchell. Veeam.com. Veeam.com. If you just virtualized 100 servers and now you're trying to figure out how to back them up, they have solutions for ESXi, they have solutions for Hyper-V, and as you guys like, they have free stuff. So if you are dealing with a virtualized environment and you're trying to figure out a backup solution, take a look at Veeam.com. Plixer.com. Plixer deals with NetFlow analytics software. So NetFlow is a component of Cisco equipment that shows you what's going on at the network layer, what devices are talking to what other devices, what kind of network jitter, all of that kind of stuff. So Plixer has a free piece of software called Scrutinizer. Scrutinizer is a free NetFlow network traffic analysis tool. So if you want to play around with NetFlow, if you want to see what's going on with the network layer and you have Cisco equipment, take a look at Plixer.com. Click on the link below this video. It'll bring you to this page where you can download Scrutinizer, the free NetFlow network traffic analysis tool. NerdsWeCanFixThat.com. If you're thinking about starting your own computer services company, but you don't want to have to worry about coming up with a logo and copyright and trademark and all of those kinds of things, you may think about buying into a computer services franchise system. Nerds We Can Fix That is a computer services franchise system. They have 62 franchises throughout the United States. They can franchise in every state other than Hawaii. They also franchise internationally. If you're thinking about starting your own computer services company, you should contact them, fill out the information below, or give them a call. Again, as I will say, franchise systems are great for a lot of people, not so good for others. Always make sure to do your due diligence, but if you're thinking about starting a computer services company anyway, you might as well contact Nerds We Can Fix That to see what they have to say. Adaxes.com. If you're dealing with Active Directory on a large scale, so you have hundreds of users to add, hundreds of users to disable, so on and so forth, you may want to take a look at Adaxes.com. This is Active Directory management and automation software. So this tries to automate and simplify the Active Directory workflow. So if you are in a large-scale Active Directory infrastructure, take a look at Adaxes.com. Altero.com, Altaro.com, if you're dealing with virtualization in a Hyper-V environment. So we're talking about Windows Server 2008 R2, 2012, and 2012 R2. Take a look at Altero.com. They have a number of Hyper-V backup solutions. They have the free version, which will back up to 2 VMs for free forever. They also have the unlimited version, starting at only $400 per host. I think this is a very good value. So if you are dealing with Hyper-V virtualization and you need a backup solution, take a look at Altero.com. So this question comes from Rob W. Let's see here. Wondering if you could give me a few pointers on what I need to do to get my computers at the office and the ones in the warehouse, 2 separate routers, 2 different accounts, both from Verizon, if that matters, all working together. I have like $900 left in the tech budget. So the question this guy is positing is they have an office and they have a warehouse. Now one of the things I will say is he did not give me nearly enough information. I do not know if the office is within the same parking lot as the warehouse or if the office is 5 miles away from the warehouse, and so that really makes a lot of difference. Again, when you're asking questions, always make sure to be about as specific as possible because that really matters. If you have 2 buildings sitting side by side, you literally might be able to run a Cat5 cable from one to the other. I've done that. If you have like a little alleyway between 2 buildings, I have put a pole on one building just to make sure the cable is like 50 feet up, and then run just a Cat5 cable across to the other building, popped it on the other building, and away you go. So it really depends. If you're trying to connect 2 buildings to the same network, it depends on how far away they are. I had one company, it was about 50 feet from one building to the other, and they literally just went out, got a trench machine, we just trenched a line, and basically all I did is I dropped Cat5 cable down into the trench. We covered it up, and that connected, you know, the two buildings that were 50 feet away. So you have a lot of options here. The first option is if the buildings are close together, like relatively close together, is literally string a network cable from one building to the other. Again, there's a lot of ways to do that. If you can trench, you can trench. If you're dealing with a parking lot environment, one of the things you can look for is a lot of times there's like drainage ditches or drainage pipes. And so you can literally pop a network cable out of one building, feed it through a drainage pipe to get into the other building and go from there. You could do something like that. You can do, again, what I did with the one office warehouse environment where they had a lot of trucks moving through. So we had to make sure that the cable wouldn't get snagged by the trucks. And so what we did is we popped the cable out the side of the building. We ran it up onto the office. So the office was a one-story building. We ran it up on there. And then what we did is we put on a 15-foot pole. Then we ran the cable up the 15-foot pole. And then, you know, that was then like 40 feet, 35, 40 feet in the air. And then we ran it across to the warehouse building. So you can do something like that. So that's if the buildings are truly close together. Now, if the buildings are farther apart, but more or less on the same property, what you can do is you can connect them using a wireless bridge. So essentially what you do is you get two external wireless access points. I like Cisco. There's a lot of other equipment out there, but basically you get two external Cisco wireless access points, or wireless access points. You put them onto the outsides of both buildings. So you put one on the outside of the office and one on the outside of the warehouse. You point them at each other, and then you create a wireless bridge for those wireless access points. Just look at the instructions. It's pretty easy to do. So those are the ways to connect two buildings if you're relatively close together. Now let's say you're far apart. Let's say the warehouse is 5 miles away from the office. Then basically all you would have to do is create what is called a VPN, a virtual private network connection, from the warehouse to the main office. So a lot of these small business networking routers now, they can create VPN tunnels to each other. So what happens is you have the one router at the warehouse, you connect it with a VPN tunnel to the router that's sitting in your office, and then all the traffic in the warehouse will then get routed through that VPN tunnel to the office. So as far as the warehouse computers are concerned, they're on the exact same network as the office. So those are the ways to do it, and you would do that with the routers so that you don't have to worry about client configurations on each individual computer within that warehouse. Basically, if you set up the VPN tunnel using the routers, then that affects all the computers because they all use that one router. And again, instead of going around and dealing with each individual client computer and setting up the tunnel that way. And that would be the way you do it. Which one you pick is up to you. You know, Netgear, Linksys, whatever you like. You go out and do some research. But those would be the options. And that is one thing I would think about too, is if you want to save money. I do see a lot of times where companies have buildings that are relatively close together and they have entire ISP accounts for each building. This isn't so bad if you're using Verizon or Comcast business class, because you know you're paying $100 a month for that. But I did see back in the day where people would run T1 lines. So you would have a $450 T1 line going to the office, and then literally, you know, 30 feet away, you have a warehouse, and they would run another $450 T1 line to the warehouse. And that's $450 a month, which comes out to like $5,500 per year. And, you know, because they didn't think, hey, we can just throw up some wireless access points, create a wireless bridge, and then save ourselves a whole crap ton of money. So yeah, those are some thoughts. Those are what I would be thinking about. But do see if you can actually run a network cable. Again, network cables, being a real professional, I can say I haven't always done things the most professionally, if that makes a lot of sense. And so I have taken stock standard Cat5 or Cat5e network cable you can buy at Home Depot, and I have put it out in the elements, and I have buried it, and frankly, I have never had an issue. Like with the one cable that we had to bury, that had to be done like in a day. Like literally, oh, God bless those clients because they pay me a dumb amount of money. But it really was a type of thing where they came to me and they said, hey, you know that networking project we've been talking about for like 8 months? And I said, yeah. And they said, okay, it has to be done in 3 days. I was like, what? And so I will tell you with that, that's where they took a trencher, and like I say, they cut about 3 feet into the ground, and I didn't have time to go out and buy conduit or any of that crap, or even buy any specialized cable. So I took just stock standard, like I say, that Cat5, Cat5e, put it 3 feet under the ground, they buried it, and I have to tell you, it worked for 3 years, all the way up until they put a backhoe through it. And so even when it did fail, you know, anything's going to fail if you put a backhoe through it. So so that is one of those things to think about. Don't, again, there is the professional way of doing things, and then there's the way that professionals do things. And all I would say is, if you can connect two buildings with just stock standard Cat5 cable, it actually works pretty well. So this question comes from Julia. I have a few people using laptops in the business. How would the roaming profile work when they are not connected to the network? I would love to implement the solution if it is possible to make the roaming profile update when they log back into the network. It would actually work pretty easily, but I'm not really sure if that's what you really want. So in Windows Active Directory world, you can have something called a roaming profile. What that means is you can sit down at any computer in the Active Directory network, and when you log in, you will be presented with your personal profile. So this is used a lot, let's say in call center environments, or any place where it really doesn't matter where somebody sits. You know, basically you have 100 people, they come in the morning and they just have to find a computer and sit down at it. So so call centers, telemarketing, any kind of that. So all the users have a few customizations. You know, they may customize their email address, they may have a couple of customizations, but beyond that, they don't need their own workstation. They don't set up a little picture with their dog or their spouse or any of that kind of stuff. You know, they just come in and they sit down wherever. So what a roaming profile allows you to do is any computer that you sit in, you will get your profile. So the question then becomes, in this particular place, if people have laptops and they're connecting to the network and they're disconnecting to the network, how would the roaming profiles operate? Would that work in this environment? And theoretically, it would work in this environment, because what you have to understand, again, in Microsoft Active Directory world, unless you do something weird with the configuration, your profile is always cached locally to your computer. So when you log into Active Directory, all your username, password information goes to the server authenticates you, and then when that happens, you get your profile information. When you get your profile information, all that information is cached locally, so that if your computer no longer has a connection to the server, you can still do things like log in and use the computer. So that is what happens. So if you have roaming profiles on your laptop computers, basically all that account information, that profile information, will be cached until somebody sits down at the computer the next time. But that is where I would question why you would want roaming profiles on laptops. Again, you have to think about any implementation based on the environment you're dealing with. So if you have a call center environment and you truly don't care where anybody sits, they just have to come in and find a seat and do their job, that's a great place for a roaming profile. But if you have laptops, generally people get kind of possessive about their laptops. Laptops aren't generally something that people swap around. So I would question if you really want a roaming profile with laptops, or if you're just kind of getting confused about what a roaming profile actually is. Roaming profiles allow you to sit at any computer. What you're probably thinking about is simply the idea of your profile being cached on the laptop, and then you can walk away with it. And so that happens normally, whether you have a normal profile or whether you have a roaming profile. Whenever you log into a Windows client computer, your profile is cached. You can then walk away, you can do your email, you can do all of your stuff, even if you're not connected to the domain controller. And then when you come back and connect, everything else gets synchronized. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense for you, because one of the things you have to worry about with laptops, just just to keep in mind is every profile takes a chunk of space depending on how much information is in that profile. So especially with laptops, you're not usually dealing with massive hard drives. So if everybody is kind of swapping laptops around, let's say you have 20 people using a laptop, that means you're going to have 20 different profiles cached on that laptop. And if you're lucky, that means, what, 200 gigs of information. If you're unlucky, it may end up being like 2 terabytes, if you get what I'm saying, because every user, when they download or they save pictures, or when they download or they save music, or they download and they save movie files, that's going to start taking up more and more space within their profile, and then all the other profiles share that laptop computer. So overall, I would say don't do roaming profiles on laptops, unless you really know what you're doing. Unless you're not asking me questions, I would say don't do roaming profiles on laptops. But otherwise, that's kind of how roaming profiles work. I hope that helps, and don't do it on my laptops. So for the final thoughts for today, I want to talk to you guys about where we are with the Internet of Things and the Internet of Everything, and why this is very important for you guys as geeks and as technology professionals, right? Because one of the things that people don't think enough about in the world of IT is that things change. What is valuable today will not be valuable tomorrow. What is not valuable today may be valuable tomorrow, right? You know, back in the day, back in 1999, if you had your MCSE, that was just like a certificate made of gold. Now, if you have your MCSE, you know, that plus 10 years experience might get you a job. It's one of those things, everything shifts. I remember back when telephone system administrators were just the bee's knees. Those guys made a crap ton of money. They were just the most amazing technologists in the world. You know, they controlled, you know, corporate telephone systems, and they were just these bigwigs. And then about that quick, many of those people literally lost their jobs and didn't have anything to fall back on, because telephone systems are a very, very specific type of technology that isn't really analogous to anything else. You know, if you can do computers, you can do other things with telephone systems. They're basically telephone systems. So I want you guys thinking about that as we're moving into this world of the Internet of Things and the Internet of Everything, because I think that, well, basically everybody thinks that that is where all the real money is going into the future. Because, you know, you have to think about cycles for all of these different types of technology. Again, back during the 90s, it was all about setting up websites. It was about Active Directory. It was about Cisco type equipment. Then we came into the early 2000s, and that was after the dot-com bust. So basically it was all just trying to manage costs on everything. Then things like, then the iPhone came out in 2007. Then Android came out, iPad came out, then a lot of money got pumped into mobile devices, into social networking, and all of those kinds of things. But I would argue, if you look at a lot of that technology now, I think it's starting to lag a bit. Now, I know there's a lot of new technology coming out. I know there's a lot of money to still be made in mobile development. But if you look at how the business of technology is going, it does seem like all of those things have kind of plateaued. Last quarter for iPad sales was they were down by something like 13%. What you're seeing in the mobile world is that all of these people made a lot of money developing all of these new mobile applications, but now they have been developed. A zillion iPads have already been sold. A zillion Android devices have already been sold. Once those items are sold and people have purchased them, they don't necessarily need to replace them very often. And so although that's still a lucrative business and will be for a long time, the money there has probably plateaued. That's not where there's going to be a lot of money going into the future. Whereas if you start looking at the Internet of Things, if you start looking at the Internet of Everything, the idea that all these little computerized sensors will be out there to be able to collect information and be able to do things with it, right now I would argue we are like the equivalent of 2006 before the mobile boom. That's where we are in 2014, where there's a lot of these balls in the air and everybody's trying trying to figure out, you know, the platform and the standards for Internet of Things and Internet of Everything. And as soon as a couple of more fundamental standards are put down, at that point there is going to be a lot of money to be made. And so that is one of those things that I want you guys thinking about, because again, you guys are focused on Active Directory, Microsoft, you're focused on Linux, you know, just as Linux, you're focused on Cisco equipment and all that kind of thing. But in the Internet of Things and the Internet of Everything world, it's not quite the same. Again, I did a video yesterday showing you guys a cellular modem here. And that's what you have to understand, is that it's no longer as important to really understand the guts of this networking equipment as it is to understand how to deploy it into these weird environments. So if you have 10 sensors in a factory that all need to be able to send data back to a headquarters office, how are you going to do that? Do you need a DSL line? Do you need a cellular modem? Can each one of those devices communicate back somehow? That's the kind of stuff that I would say you guys should be thinking about. So really, you guys should be going out there, learn about the Raspberry Pi, learn about the Arduino board, learn about a lot of this equipment that, you know, there's not necessarily certifications on. It's just equipment that's out there that if you take this and put this together and put it all into some kind of package, you can kind of sell for a lot of money, because I think that's where we're going. You know, 10 years ago, back when I was doing the consulting thing, the idea was you go in, as you sell a router, you sell a switch, you sell 10 client computers, and you sell one server. And you would sell that as a package for $30,000 or something like that. What I would argue now is that you would go into a business environment and you would ask them what their problems are. So let's say you go into a restaurant franchise system. You go to them and you say, hey, what problems do you have? What information do you need to collect? And I know I used to work in the restaurant industry. And so one of the big issues is making sure that all the food in all the different restaurants stays at the proper temperature, because people have this stupid habit of, you know, they walk into the big refrigerator and they accidentally leave the door open. And if you leave the door open, then the temperature warms up in there and then the food spoils quicker. So you might go to them and you say, oh, okay, so you're having a problem making sure that all of your walk-in refrigerators are staying at the proper temperature. What if I created a computerized sensor system for you that would have a little temperature sensor on it? Whenever the temperature went above a certain level, it would then send an email alert to the manager of that particular franchise, and would also put a log in your headquarters office. So headquarters could see how often the temperature goes above the level it's supposed to, and the manager would automatically be alerted. You don't have to worry that the door stayed open for 2 hours before somebody walked back and went, oh no, the door's open, right? And this is the type of thing I think you need to be thinking about in the modern world going forward, where how you're going to be making money off of this stuff. It's not necessarily Windows 8 or even Windows 10 or Mac or any of the kinds of things you're thinking about. It's these weird little computerized devices that communicate with the rest of the world to perform specific tasks. And what's really cool in the modern world is, again, with Raspberry Pi, with Arduino boards, with Galileo, with a lot of the other different development kits that are being created, this is the type of thing that you can actually do in your own little consulting shop. In the second bedroom of your house, you can actually have a little computerized manufacturing company where you create funky ass little computerized devices and sell them for specialized tasks to clients. So that is what I would say you guys should be thinking about for the future. And so that's why I show you guys things like the cellular modem, because I really do think this kind of stuff, this is where the future is, not Server 2015. Again, nothing against Server 2015 when it comes out, but that's not where the real money is.